Chapter 8. Ursus Revisited. A week after Cerberus returned from Nordrius, the king prepared to set off for Ursus to attend the wedding of King Tamark. Lydia and Errol were to accompany Ectheon on his journey. An invitation had been extended to Cerberus as well, but on the eve of the journey, Ectheon learned that his brother had left Arjan. "And so Cerberus is gone then?" Ectheon asked Eadril as the two sat in the king's study. "He left this morning, along with his soldiers," Eadril answered. "Did he say where he was going?" Ectheon asked. "No," Eadril replied. "Off on another one of his ill-fated quests, no doubt," Ectheon sighed. "Prince Cerberus and the demon hunters. Just how many demon hunters has my brother recruited now?" 12, Eadril replied. "A number greater than my own knights," Ectheon mused aloud. "I do not think his purpose is to rival the Elven Guard," Eadril said. "Of course not," Ectheon said quickly. He then paused in silent contemplation before saying, "But still." "But what, your majesty?" Eadril asked. "My father's words about Cerberus weigh heavily on my mind," Ectheon said. "As do other matters." "What is wrong, my king?" Eadril asked. Ectheon rose from his seat and began to pace the room. "There is a shadow of dread upon my heart, Eadril," Ectheon said. "A terrible foreboding of doom has consumed me ever since Cerberus returned from Palacaid, and more acutely since his arrival after his expedition to Nordrius. It shames me to say this, but I almost feel as though he was not meant to return from Palacaid, that he somehow cheated death there, and because of that, death has followed him here to collect the bill in any manner it can. And in your thoughts does death bear the name Celacia?" Eadril ventured. "Celacia is the name of the wedge that has driven itself between my brother and me," Ectheon said. "Am I wrong not to trust her?" "I am afraid I do not know her well enough to say," Eadril said. "On the surface, there are several reasons to be wary of her, but as one who has suffered from false perceptions, I would not be quick to pass judgment on her." "I have not seen her once since Cerberus brought her here," Ectheon said. "Have you?" "Cerberus keeps her closely guarded," Eadril said. "I have also heard it said that she is very ill, that the travails of what transpired in Nordrias have left her bedridden. And so she remains an enigma, and my thoughts remain troubled," Ectheon said grimly. "Somehow I do not think that it is the best of times for me to be leaving Arjan, but go I must." "Perhaps the journey will do you good," Eadril noted. "Perhaps," Ectheon conceded. "I will trust the kingdom to your watchful eyes. As my steward, you will possess all of my powers in my absence, including authority over my brother Cerberus, should he return." "I understand, and I am honored by your trust in me," Eadril said. "Now go to Ursus and enjoy yourself. I will make certain that nothing happens while you are away." The mighty city of Ursus was all a bustle in preparation for the royal wedding of King Tamark and Lady Ashley. The ceremony was to be held in St. Urian's Cathedral. It had been many years since the magnificent house of worship had been host to such a joyous event. Great pains had been taken to place the cathedral in the utmost beauty for the occasion. Work was done all the way up until the eve of the wedding to properly adorn the inner chamber. The following morning brought out all the beauty and splendor of the Ursal capital. The citizens of the city flocked to the streets to watch the wedding procession as it wound through the avenues on its way to the cathedral. The elite horsemen of the Ursal army, with their shining armor and plumed helms, led the parade. Next came the carriage of the groom and his groomsmen. A flower-decked carriage carrying the bridesmaids followed this. The final carriage held the fair lady, Ashley. 2 white steeds pulled the gilded carriage in which the future queen of Ursulus rode. The cart was enclosed to hide the bride-to-be from view. The procession ended at the steps of St. Urian's Cathedral. The bride was the last to enter the church. A sigh of admiration came from the crowd as the radiant maiden stepped out of the carriage. From her crystal slippers to her fine lace veil, she was an image of pure elegance. With graceful steps, she ascended the steps of the cathedral as the snowy white train of her gown flowed behind her. Inside, Tamark waited to take her hand in marriage. The ceremony was both solemn and majestic. With a kiss, their vows were sealed. They left the church as husband and wife. In the street outside, a throng of Ursels anxiously waited to see the royal couple. The crowd let out a resounding cheer as Tamark and Ashley descended the steps leading down to the street, where a carriage awaited to sweep them off to the magnificent reception that had been prepared to celebrate their union. As Sarah prepared to board the carriage that was to take her and her Teluvian relatives to the festivities, she felt the cold autumn air against her hands. "Oh my, I must have left my gloves back in the church," she sighed. "I will get them for you," Errol offered. The prince dashed back up the steps and into the cathedral. He walked through the empty chamber and made his way to the front pew where Sarah had been sitting. Errol groaned in dismay as he looked down at the empty pew. He searched under and around the bench, but could not find Sarah's gloves anywhere. "Where can they be?" he mumbled to himself in frustration. As he looked up, Errol noticed a woman cleaning the area near the altar. "Excuse me, miss. I wonder if you might have seen a pair of gloves lying about here," the prince asked. His words broke the silence of the room and startled the woman, who had failed to see the prince earlier. She wheeled around to see who was speaking to her. It was at that moment that Errol first saw the face of the maiden Celia, daughter of Urkai. Her rose-colored cheeks and trembling lips struck the prince as exceptionally fair. He felt his heart uncontrollably swoon in her presence. It was the first time he had been so overcome by such a strange yet wonderful feeling. Once she saw the prince, Celia regained her composure. "Oh, you startled me," she said. "I am sorry. I did not hear your question, good sir. Could you please repeat it?" This time, it was Errol who did not hear the question. He had become lost in the maiden's sparkling emerald eyes. Just like the green gems, they danced in the sunlight, captivating the prince with their brilliance. "Sir, is something wrong?" Celia asked. Her voice woke Errol from his trance. "Oh, I am sorry. I was just wondering if you have seen a pair of gloves around here somewhere," the prince asked. "They belong to my brother's wife." "I am afraid I have not," Celia replied. "You might want to check the cloakroom, though. You might find them there." Errol felt slightly embarrassed, for he was unfamiliar with the vast dimensions of the cathedral and could not remember where the cloakroom was. "I hate to bother you any further, but could you please direct me to the cloakroom?" he asked, sheepishly. "Of course, I would be happy to," Celia said graciously. "Just give me a moment to put these flowers away." "Here, let me help you," the prince offered as he grabbed one of the large bouquets. "Oh, you do not need to," the maiden protested. "I can manage." "I insist," Errol said. "Just show me where to put them." The maiden directed Errol to the courtyard, where the flowers were to be placed in the garden. "This is very kind of you, sir," Celia said. "Please, call me Errol," the prince insisted. "Helping you is the least I can do after interrupting your work. Say, why are you working anyway?" "King Tamark has declared today a holiday. You should be at the festival enjoying yourself like everyone else. Keeping the church clean is a very important duty," Celia explained. "Besides, I am not one for such events. I do not think I would have a very good time." "Nonsense," Errol scoffed. "You will have a wonderful time. There is no reason why such a beautiful woman should be left to such dreary duties on this joyous day." "But there is much for me to do here," Celia insisted. "I have an idea," Errol continued. "How about I help you finish your work, and then we will both go to the festival?" Celia was shocked by his proposal. "Sir, I really could not ask you to do such a thing." "You are not asking, I am insisting," Errol pressed her. "But are you sure a fine lord like you would want to be seen at the king's reception with a humble maidservant?" Celia humbly asked. "I find no shame in being seen with the most beautiful woman in Ursus, regardless of her occupation," the prince said. Celia blushed at the prince's compliment. She could not believe her ears. His offer was almost too good to be true. She felt like pinching herself to make sure she was not dreaming, but refrained for fear of waking up. "Your words are too kind," she said. "How can I refuse such a wonderful offer?" "It is my hope that you cannot," Errol said as he looked eagerly into the maiden's eyes. "You are right, I cannot," Celia laughed. "I would be happy to go with you." "In that case, may I have the name of my lovely escort?" Errol asked. "My name is Celia." "Celia," Errol said with a smile, "it is indeed a pleasure to have your company." Before finishing her work, Celia led Errol to the cloakroom so that he could return the missing gloves to his sister-in-law. As they returned to the entry room, Errol saw Ectheon and Sarah. "Ah, there are my brother and his wife now," Errol said. Tension suddenly filled the air as Celia's eyes met those of Sarah and Ectheon. Ghosts from the past filled the room, bringing an uneasy silence. The circumstances provided an atmosphere far too awkward for conversation. Errol, unaware of the events that had led up to this most uncomfortable moment, finally broke the silence. "Is something the matter?" he asked, noticing the obvious discord between the two parties. Celia, overcome by guilt and shame, could not face Sarah any longer. She turned and ran off, leaving Errol standing perplexed. "Wait, come back," the prince shouted. But his cries were in vain, as Celia soon left his line of sight. He started to chase after her, but Ectheon stopped him. "Just a moment, Errol," the king said. "Before you go running after that woman, I think you should know a little bit about her." "Ectheon, please," Sarah pleaded, not wishing to dredge up painful memories. "I am sorry, Sarah, but Errol needs to know about Celia before he makes a big mistake," Ectheon insisted. "What do you mean?" Errol demanded. "How do you know this woman?" Ectheon proceeded to tell the tale of the daughter of Urkai's dark past, careful to spare certain details that might have offended his wife. Errol could scarcely believe that the woman his brother was describing was the same one whom he had just met. "How can this be?" the prince asked in a mystified tone. "She seemed so nice and sincere when I talked to her, nothing at all like the woman you described to me." "Perhaps she has changed," Sarah said. Ectheon was shocked by his wife's forgiving tone. His assessment of Celia was not as placatory. "How can you say that she has changed?" Ectheon exclaimed. "She is a greedy, conniving..." "Ectheon," Sarah said sternly, "your description of Celia may have been appropriate a few years ago, but now I think it is quite possible that you are wrong. Perhaps her new occupation has had a positive effect on her, as I sincerely hoped it would. I think Errol is right. I think she is a different person now. Do you want to know what I think?" the king asked. "I think that Celia's manipulative mind is at work once again, and Errol is her intended victim. She sees in him a person of wealth and power, a person who can return her to a life of comfort and riches. Your forgiveness is truly admirable, my dear, but I fear you are terribly misjudging her intentions." "I understand the hate you have for Celia," Sarah said. "I know it is because you love me that you so despise those who harm me. But there is one thing you must understand, Ectheon. I do not hate Celia. I hate all that she has done to me, but in my heart, I do not hate her. There was a time when I did, but I have come to realize that forgiveness is necessary if we are to be truly happy. How can your heart be happy if it carries such a bitter burden?" "Some crimes are too terrible to be forgotten," Ectheon insisted. "That does not mean that those who commit them are beyond redemption," Sarah argued. "People can change, Ectheon. Why, you yourself saw Diaxes transform from hero to villain right before your eyes. More than that, you have witnessed a change in me. I am sure you can recall the difficulties you faced while trying to win my heart when I was convinced that I would never love again. Would you have gone to such pains if you did not think that I was capable of change?" Sarah's words silenced Ectheon. He found her insight remarkable. The hostility he had so fiercely expressed only moments before had suddenly dissipated. How could he be angry with Celia when Sarah herself refused to be? Maybe Celia had changed after all. He still had doubts about her intentions, but he decided to keep them to himself. However, he would not stand idly by and watch his brother be manipulated, if such should become the case. The festival celebrating the marriage of Tamark and Ashley was a grand event. A vast array of food and drink was available to all the guests. Music filled the air as minstrels sang songs of joy and romance. The reception was held in the city's spacious central square to accommodate the large volume of people in attendance. What made the event unique was that all the citizens of Ursulus were welcome to join in the celebration, not just the elite members of the upper class. It was this sort of treatment that had made Tamark one of the most popular leaders in Ursul history. Despite the overwhelmingly cheerful atmosphere of the reception, Errol found it hard to enjoy himself. His mind was on Celia. Regardless of what Ectheon had said, Errol could not bring himself to think a single bad thought about her. In his heart, he knew that Celia was no longer the evil person that had hurt Sarah so badly. All her actions back in the cathedral were contrary to the image that Ectheon held to be true. Errol recalled his conversation with Celia in the courtyard. If she was indeed the wickedly ambitious schemer Ectheon thought she was, then why did she not jump at the chance to go to the festival with him? It was only after much persuasion that she had agreed to go. Errol found himself torn. He could tell that Ectheon was not happy about his association with Celia. He hated to in any way fall from his brother's graces, but his feelings for Celia were like none he had ever had before. Errol pondered the situation over and over again in his mind until he finally reached a decision. Night fell on the city, and still the party continued. From a chamber in St. Ulrian's Cathedral, Celia looked out in the direction where the cheerful throng had gathered to celebrate the king's wedding. Part of her duties at the church was to look after the sick and the weak that sought shelter in the cathedral's hospital. It was the part of her work that she found the most fulfilling. As Celia went about the task of serving dinner to the bedridden, she thought about the kind lord she had met earlier. How polite and well-mannered he had been, and handsome. She had been extremely flattered by his advances. Celia still found it hard to believe that someone of such nobility could have been interested in her. The thoughts of what might have been tormented Celia's mind. For a few brief moments, she had felt happiness like she had never known before, not even in the days prior to her fall from royalty. Errol had been interested in her for the person she was, not for the position her father held. How cruel fate was to have teased her so, only to take it all away. "Celia, why do you frown so?" asked the elderly woman to whom Celia had just served dinner. "I do not know," the maiden shrugged. "I just do not feel very happy right now." "You know, I like you, Celia," the woman said. "You always make me smile, and around here we need all the smiles we can get. I know it is not easy for a beautiful young lady to be hidden away in such a dreary place, catering to the likes of me." "I love my work here," Celia insisted. "I enjoy helping you and all the others. Believe me, I do." "Oh, I believe you do, and I know I speak for everyone when I express my gratitude for all of your care," the woman said. "But I worry about you, Celia. I really do." "How so?" Celia asked. "I was once a young girl like you," the woman said. "I know what it is like to be your age. You should take some time off occasionally and go out and meet other people your age. You are a lovely girl, Celia. I would hate to see you become an old, lonely spinster. Take tonight, for instance. You should be at the festival with everyone else, having a good time." "I do not know," Celia muttered as she looked away. "Everyone knows how you came to be here," the old woman continued. "We know you originally came to this position by force and not choice. My old ears have heard many a tale about your lust and greed, and I have suffered at the hands of you and your father. But I know that you are no longer that person. You are no longer Celia, the heartless brat of Urkai. The name remains the same, but the person has changed. You have become a friend to me and others like me. Your kindness has been a great comfort to me, but I think it is you who needs comfort most of all." Celia was just about to ask the woman what she meant by the final line, when suddenly the chamber door flew open. Celia's eyes lit up as Prince Errol entered the room. She immediately felt a wave of guilt for having run off without an explanation. "Errol, I am sorry for the way I behaved earlier," Celia said humbly. "Let me explain. Please, Celia, there is something I must tell you first, Errol said. I realize how awkward it must have been for you back in the church. Ectheon and Sarah told me about what had happened. Celia looked at the ground in shame. Then you know about my past, she said softly. Yes, I do, and it is exactly that, your past, Celia, Errol said. I do not know the woman my brother described to me. The woman I met today is nothing like that. She is warm and kind and far from wicked. But Sarah, Celia cried, I cannot bring myself to face her after all that I have done to her. Surely she thinks the worst of me. Sarah does not hate you, Errol said. I heard her say so myself. She no longer harbors any animosity toward you. Do you not see? She put you here, not in the hopes of making you suffer, but to make you a better person. She never intended for you to give up your life. It was she who sentenced you to this penance, and now she has freed you from it. You are free to live your own life now, however you may please. I have with me a letter from Sarah, in which she has written all that I have said. But my work here, I cannot just up and leave, Celia said. Go ahead, child, the elderly woman urged her. Go and enjoy life while you can. We will be all right without you. Celia looked anxiously at Errol, as if waiting for him to say something to encourage her decision. I cannot decide for you, the prince said as he read her thoughts. But my offer for this evening still stands. The night is still young. Please grant me the pleasure of your company at the festival. Celia turned back to the bedridden woman, who was briskly nodding in encouragement. I accept your offer, the maiden said, as she turned and embraced the prince.